All right, it's Monday morning here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You see the website below, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards, which, as you can imagine, have been very, very lively over the last few days. Lots of things for Pitt fans to talk about, and they have been talking at length about those things over and over and over again. Some topics getting repeated quite a few times, or at least some talking points getting repeated quite a few times, but understandably so. It's been that kind of weekend for Pitt fans who have certainly seen that kind of weekend multiple times, but sometimes some weekends hit a little harder than others, and certainly the loss at Miami on Saturday night hit pretty hard. We'll dive into that. We're going to talk about that game at Miami. We're going to talk about the ACC Tournament bracket. We're going to talk about Pitt's NCAA Tournament chances. All those things, of course, are there for us to discuss this morning on the Morning Pitt. But before we do, make sure you like this video, click that like button, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you stay up to date on all of our exclusive Pitt video content that we post here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. These Morning Pitt videos once a day, Monday through Friday. Our live shows that we do every Wednesday night at 8:30. Or also post-game. We do a lot of post-game. We're doing post-game shows now. We did one after the Notre Dame game. We did that one after the Miami game. We're going to do one after every postseason game as well. Hopefully there are lots of those for us to do. Hopefully there's more than just two. There'll be at least two. And ideally there'll be more than that. Since it'll be a post-game show on Wednesday, Pitt's playing in the 2:30 game, tentatively scheduled at 2:30. So we'll be live around 5 o'clock or so. We're not going to do a live show then at 8:30 after that. So that'll be our Panther-Lair show for the week on Wednesday. But look, it's all, who knows what the schedule is? When's the show going to start? When are we going live? What's happening here? I got to follow on Twitter to see when the live show starts. No, just subscribe and turn on notifications. You get an alert sent to your phone so you never miss any of our live shows here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And if Saturday night was any indication, you don't want to miss any of the live shows here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's they're fun. They're lively. You share your comments and questions. I tell you what I'm thinking about the game. You tell me what you were thinking about the game. We go back and forth and we have good chat. So definitely want to do that. Should be a lively one on Wednesday as well. All right, so Pitt loses at Miami, and I mean, I don't even know if we need to go too deep on why they lost at Miami or what happened. I mean, they got out-rebounded by 22. They gave up 25 second chance points. I could stop right there. I don't have to talk about anything else. All right, I don't have to talk about Greg Elliott. I don't have to talk about Federico. I don't have to talk about that the final 15 seconds of that game or what happened in the final 9 seconds. I don't have to talk about any of those things. They gave up 25 second chance points. And this is not a new problem for this team. We've seen them get out rebounded pretty often. I feel like it hadn't happened as much recently in the last few weeks. I think they improved, or at least maybe they were just playing against teams that didn't rebound very well. But on the whole, they have struggled with rebounding to the point where the last time they played Miami, they actually won the rebounding battle, and it was almost kind of a surprise because Miami came into that game with statistics and a reputation of being a very good rebounding team, particularly in the offensive glass. I mean, you remember some of the games like North Carolina where they just got killed on giving up offensive rebounds. And it was almost a surprise that Miami was not able to rebound better in the first game against Pitt. Well, they made up for it on Saturday night and just absolutely destroyed Pitt. And when you give up 25 second chance points, you can play pretty well and still lose. And I think, there were certainly defensive lapses for Pitt, but I think on the whole, their offense was pretty good. I mean, they shot good percentages, 46, 47% from the field, 42% from three. They only committed like 7 turnovers. Those weren't the issues. They had defensive lapses. They gave up too many easy buckets. But you know what? Some of the easy buckets were second chance points, were putbacks, offensive rebounds that went back up or got kicked out to Wooga Poplar for a 3. We talked about Wooga on the post game show, how he made 17 3-pointers in the first 19 ACC games all season. Last year he made 6 3-pointers all season long. His first year in Miami, he made 6 3-pointers. This year he made 17 in the first 19 ACC games, and he hit 6 against Pitt. All these things were relevant. Most relevant was the rebounding disadvantage. And the reality is, that's it has been a problem all year. And they've had a few games where they've been able to gang rebound well and get good rebounding production out of their guards. Jamarius Burton has had games where he's rebounded well. Greg Elliott has had games where he's been good for 4 or 5 or 6 rebounds. And, Nike Sabandi can grab some rebounds. When that doesn't happen, their bigs are not good enough to offset it. They might have a good game here and there, but it's not a consistent performance and a consistent effort that can keep Pitt competitive on the boards. They either gang rebound and get 4 or 5 out of about 6 different guys, and then 7 or 8 out of somebody, or they get crushed on the glass. And, Saturday night was probably one of the worst of the season, but it was far from the only bad one of the season. And it killed them. They lost the game. And that's what happened Saturday night. But of course, Saturday night was the conclusion to a longer story that had been told over the last couple of weeks and really just over the last week, where Pitt entered the final week of the regular season with a game advantage, the top spot in the ACC. And, this ongoing discussion, I don't even know if it's a debate, but this ongoing conversation about whether it was a successful season with a disappointing end to the regular season, which is the stance that I've taken. The disappointing part comes in there. The disappointing part comes in with having that opportunity in front of you and really having 2 chances, 2 shots at a share of the ACC championship, regular season title, and 2 shots at a top 4 seed in a double bye, not playing until Thursday in the ACC tournament. You had 2 chances at that, both on the road, but one of them against a team at the very bottom of the ACC, a team with 2 conference wins all year, heading into the game against Pitt. And you blew that one. And then you go into the finale at Miami, a much tougher challenge than Notre Dame was, and you can't win there either. And you go from 1st to 5th. You go from a possible ACC outright regular season championship, a share of the ACC regular season championship, a top 4 seed, a number 1 seed. All these things were on the table. There were so many different outcomes that would have produced some combination of an ACC regular season championship and a top 4 seed. At the very top end, they win both games. They're the number 1 seed, and they're the outright regular season champion. Not shared, nothing. They win the league. Right? At the top end, you win both games. Split those games, and you still at least have a share of the conference title. You have a top 4 seed. You have a double bye. Worst outcome, you lose both games. And you don't get any of it. You don't get a share of the title. You don't get an outright title. You don't get a number 1 seed. You don't get a top 4 seed. You don't get a double bye. You get a single bye. You play on Wednesday as the number 5 seed. And that's the position Pitt put themselves in. And I've brought up a few times the Florida State game, which cannot be ignored in this conversation. When we talk about all these things that were on the table for Pitt, that Florida State game cannot be ignored. A home loss to that team, bottom 4 team in the conference, is a bad loss. And it came back to bite them as much as anything. The Notre Dame game, because it was right in front of them and it was very tangible. It was a situation where this is what you're playing for. But the Notre Dame game, or the Florida State game, ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, had just as much of a negative impact. Because if you win that game, then you clinch a share of the title when you beat Syracuse on Saturday. I think you clinch a top 4 seed when you beat Syracuse on Saturday. And these last 2 games are really about playing for the number 1, the number 1 seed and the outright championship. But this team, in its imperfections, failed in some of these key moments. And key moments of games against good opponents, and key moments of games against some subpar opponents. And I think the Notre Dame and Florida State games certainly fall into that category. You lose at Duke, you lose at even Virginia Tech, you lose at Miami. These are understandable, acceptable losses. Disappointing, some of them you had a decent chance. So, you have a halftime lead at Duke, you play it down to a 2-point game at Miami. But they're understandable. They're tough conference games on the road. Everybody runs into challenges when they play tough conference games on the road. The Clemson game at home, disappointing because you had a lead, but you're still playing a top 4 team. That's a team that got a double bye into Thursday in the ACC tournament. Florida State, Notre Dame, these are bad losses. These are bad losses. These are the losses that ultimately come back to haunt you, and they have. Now, they're not going to haunt you well, they still could haunt you when it comes to the NCAA tournament, but sort of as far as the havoc they have wreaked on your chances of winning the conference and your seeding and heading into the ACC tournament, that's done. They've caused all the damage they're going to cause. Now it's up to you. And there's not really a great consensus of what Pitt needs to do to secure themselves an NCAA tournament bid. Some of it is out of their control. Some of it will depend on other teams around the country of what those teams do. But there are some things Pitt has control over. Most notably, how long they keep playing in Greensboro. And I think while there's no real consensus about what Pitt needs to do to lock up a bid to the NCAA tournament, and I don't know, and you don't know, we might have our guesses. I think they just need to do this, or I think they need to do that. Or I think they're already in. It doesn't matter what happens in Greensboro. I think they need to win the whole ACC tournament. The only thing we know for sure is that the chances of making the tournament increase every time you win. You win on Wednesday, you've got a better chance than if you lose on Wednesday. You win on Thursday, you got a better chance than if you lose on Thursday. You have to keep winning. Whatever you can do between now and Wednesday to regroup, to refocus, to replan, to look at different ways to approach things, to try to improve your rebounding, to try to improve your defense, to try to improve this or that, whatever it is, you need to do it now because yes, for 31 games, every win has counted. But right now, it is friggin' dire situation. Okay? Every game is going to have some impact on your NCAA tournament bid. And you could say that about every game over the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 week. But right now, this is it. You cannot lose to Florida State or Georgia Tech. Maybe there's a world out there, and I was kind of looking around. John Gazaway at ESPN.com put Pitt in the work to do column. This was as of yesterday. Work to do column. He said, quote, "Something unexpected can happen, of course, but appears something unexpected will indeed have to happen for the Panthers to miss the NCAA tournament." He's saying they're in. As it is right now, they're in unless something crazy happens. If I'm Pitt, I don't want to test that theory by finding out if losing to Florida State or Georgia Tech qualifies as something crazy. I don't want to find out if that qualifies as the something unexpected that could keep Pitt out of the NCAA tournament. So don't find out. Don't test it. Don't put that theory, let's find out if losing to one of these teams would be bad enough to keep Pitt out of the NCAA. Don't. Just go win. Okay? I still think you are the team that you showed yourself to be over the course of the bulk of your 31 games this season. 21 out of 31. All right? You showed yourself to be a pretty good team. Even on Saturday. You could throw in a few of the losses. And you could say even on Saturday, they showed themselves to be a pretty good team. Not without its weaknesses, not without its vulnerabilities, but a pretty good team. You need to play to that level. And you need to do it in Greensboro, and you need to be good, because you don't want to find out. You don't want to leave it to chance. You've already left too much to chance by keep having the loss to Florida State at home on your resume and the loss at Notre Dame on your resume. All right, those are already hurting you. They're holding you back. All right, and you've got wins over Virginia and wins over Miami and win over Northwestern and a good win at wins at North Carolina and NC State. You've got good things on your resume. Don't add any more bad ones. I don't know what happens if they beat Florida State or Georgia Tech and they go on and lose to Duke. It seems to me that's probably the most likely outcome. And if it happens, I think you're leaving it up a little bit to chance. Now, I kind of looked around at a bunch of different things online to see what I could find. Like I say, John Gazaway at ESPN.com has them, work to do, but seems to be in. Joe Lunardi, as of yesterday, had Pitt in his last 4 buys, so they're in and ahead of 7 other teams, but right close to that cut line. Mike DeCourcy at Fox Sports yesterday had Pitt as a 10 seed, the number 40 overall seed. TeamRankings.com actually has Pitt missing the tournament right now, 38% chance of making it. but conceding the average seed projection across the internet is a 10. Bracket Matrix surveyed about 62 brackets from what I can gather, and 60 out of those 62 have Pitt in the field as an average seed of 10.41. I think Bracket Matrix ultimately slotted them in as an 11 seed. So, I mean, you're on the right side of the cut line. You know what I mean? You're on the right side of the danger zone, as ACC Network announcers love to say. You're on the right side of the danger zone. But boy, howdy, are you close to it. You're close to it. Winning on Wednesday, beating Florida State or Georgia Tech, keeps you on the right side of it. All right, and moves you a little bit further from that danger zone, moves you a little further away from it, and gives you some room that if you happen to lose to Duke, it's not going to send you back to the other side into the danger zone. I think all this stuff is kind of a lot of it feels very imaginary to me. I mean, it's tough to project, you know. All those years when we watched Pitt, it was never a question of whether they would get in. It was, you know, are we going to be mad that they only got a 3 seed? You know, remember, it used to be that the disrespect to Pitt was that they were a 3 seed as opposed to a 2, or a 2 seed as opposed to a 1. Now it's just a question of, are they going to make the tournament at all? But hey, as we've all said, as we've often said, you know, it's better to be in this situation. You know, it's nice to be back in a situation where we're talking about what do they need to, you know, talking about Pitt as a legitimate NCAA tournament team, which they are, you know, and if they, you know, failing that, they're an NIT team, which we haven't been able to say for 7 years. You know, we have not been able to sit here on March 6th and talk about Pitt's postseason opportunities, unless we were talking about a transfer guard or a recruit that they might be trying to get late in the process. So we got that going for us. Pitt has that going for them, which is good. But this week this is the final opportunity to make a case. And they need to get back to all the things that they do well. And again, some of those things were on display. You know, what didn't happen at Miami, aside from the rebounding, was Greg Elliott. And Elliott, you know, he can run hot and cold. He ran cold early in the season. You know, I mean, there was a point early in the season, probably a solid stretch, I would think into December, maybe longer, where people talked about Elliott being the odd man out and Nike Sabandi should replace Greg Elliott in the starting lineup. And ultimately that move wasn't made. And I think it's probably fine that they kept the status quo. I mean, when Sabandi's playing better than Elliott, Sabandi gets more minutes than Elliott. You know, it doesn't matter who starts the game, who's the first 5 on the court. I mean, Miami started with 2 guys who were usually on their bench because it was senior night and they were starting that game, and Miami ended up doing just fine in that situation. So it doesn't matter who's in the starting lineup. But as far as Greg Elliott goes, they need him hitting threes. I mean, they need as many weapons firing as possible. The rebounding is what it is. It's not going to get better. They might have a game where they out-rebound the opponent, but they are not going to be a consistently good rebounding team. They haven't been all season, and they're not going to start now. Defense is going to be what it is. And they'll have stretches where they're good on defense. I think there were stretches this season where they played well on defense. Jeff Capel often says that he feels like he said this a couple weeks ago, that he felt like they've been good defensively in the half court, but where they ran into trouble is with the transition defense. The transition defense wasn't good. They were giving up too many easy baskets in transition. I guess I agree with him. I think they've had their moments. You know, I think they've had their stretches where they've played good defense, but lately it's been less good. You know, the Virginia Tech game, obviously. Syracuse game, you know, it was a unique game because they were kind of blowing them out in the second half, but Syracuse game, you know, Syracuse ended up scoring a lot and shooting a pretty good percentage. Notre Dame game obviously was a defensive travesty, and they really, you know, again, Miami got a lot of easy baskets out of putbacks and second chance opportunities, but Pitt also didn't defend that well on the first chance opportunities either. They were giving up way too many easy paths to the basket, easy cuts, and open looks from outside. So if you're getting beat, or you know, in the paint, and you're leaving guys open outside, what exactly are you defending? Like where are you focusing? If they were just shutting everything down in the paint and they left guys open outside, okay, I get it. If they were shutting everything down outside and giving up a lot in the interior, okay, I get it. But like, where are you? You know, you're getting beat on both ends right now. So what exactly are you focused on? They need to figure it out this week. They have 2 days from now until Wednesday, right? They'll probably fly to Greensboro tomorrow, I would think. We're supposed to talk to Jeff Capel and some Pitt players this afternoon. And then I think they're flying to Greensboro tomorrow. And, between now and Wednesday, they got to figure out what they can do well defensively, where they're going to focus, where the effort's going to be, and how disciplined they can be on defense, whether it's Florida State or Georgia Tech. And we'll talk about those matchups more, obviously, on Wednesday once we see on Wednesday's Morning Pitt, once we see who wins the game tomorrow. I think Florida State, Georgia Tech, that's the 12-13 seed game. It's the first game of the tournament. It starts at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, so we'll definitely have something to talk about in the aftermath of that one. On Wednesday morning, we talk about who Pitt's going to face. Pitt, of course, is 3-1 against those two teams, faced them both twice, beat Georgia Tech twice, and split the series with Florida State, losing at home and winning at Tallahassee. So we'll see what comes out of the game between the Seminoles and Yellow Jackets tomorrow, and then we'll preview that on Wednesday as Pitt gets set for its first ACC tournament game. It's fun to have excited, meaningful postseason games again, but it does create a little extra tension in your world, in your life, doesn't it? This is what we all signed up for. All right. Well, I appreciate you tuning in this morning. Of course, like I say, make sure you stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, we're going to have a lot to talk about this week. It should be an interesting week no matter what happens, no matter how many games Pitt wins. We're going to have a lot to talk about, and we'll do it all right here on the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And don't forget, we have post-game shows after every game. If they win Wednesday, we'll have one. Well, we're going to have one after the game on Wednesday no matter what. If they win on Wednesday, we'll have one on Thursday. If they win on Thursday, we'll have one on Friday. If we have one on Friday, we're going to have one Saturday night after the ACC championship game. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's see what happens on Wednesday. But either way, we'll be back tomorrow morning for another Morning Pitt. So make sure you check it out right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.